This is Unit 9, Lesson 1, Part 2. So in Part 1, we talked about the equations for circles, and now we're going to learn how to graph them. And that's kind of going to be the pattern, back and forth. Each of the shapes that we talked about with the intro to conic sections in the last lesson, we're going to learn how to graph them, we're going to learn how to write their equations, and then back and forth for each one of these shapes. So we have a standard form of the equation of a circle, which, if I'm not mistaken, you guys should have seen at least once in your geometry class. So it looks like this. We have x minus h, quantity squared, plus y minus k, quantity squared, equals r squared. So this is what we were working with in the last lesson when we were writing these equations. So in today's lesson, you guys are going to be given the equations and then graph them. All right, so just a reminder, h comma k is the center. So h and k are positive in this setup, and this is minus h and minus k, so that means it's always the opposite. And then r is the radius. This is r squared, which means you'll have to take the square root in order to find the radius. So we are going to do this first example right here. The directions say identify the center and radius of the circle, and then graph. So the radius, the center. So this x plus 2 means that negative 2 would be the x coordinate. And then y minus 5 means that positive 5 would be the y coordinate. And then for the radius, 9 is like your r squared. So if r squared is 9, that means the radius is just 3, because it'd be 3 squared to give us 9 right there. So here's how we graph them. It's a super straightforward process. I hope you find it to be easy. We go to the center. So negative 2, 5. 2 and then up 5. I usually just like to put a little mark there, not even really a point, because technically it's not a point on the circle, it's just the center of the circle. And then we have a radius of 3, so what we're going to do there, if you guys had like a compass or something like you do in geometry, you would set it 3 units away and then go all the way around the circle. So for our purposes, on a coordinate system like this, we can just go up, down, left, and right 3 units each, and then just connect those dots. So from the center, we go up 3 units, plot a point. We go down 3 units, plot a point. We go to the left 3 units, and we go to the right 3 units. So always coming back to that center. So you can see, like right now it looks like a diamond, but obviously we know it's supposed to be a circle. So we're just going to connect the dots. Fair warning, I am not good at keeping my circles circular. All right, so that was number 1. Next one, this whole next section that we're going to work with are equations that are given not in standard form. These ones are like perfectly in standard form, ready to go. So these directions say that we need to first write the equation in standard form, and then we can identify the center and the radius and graph. All right, so looking at the equations as they're written right now, we are going to kind of backtrack and work our way to the way that they are supposed to look. So looking at number 3, we see a coefficient right here, right? There's a 5 right here, there's a 5 right here. We don't have coefficients in this standard form. So we're gonna take those 5s and divide them out. So divide everything by 5. So reducing down, this is an x squared plus a y squared equals, and then 80 divided by 5 is 16. So that is now standard form. People think that there's something missing when they look at something that looks like this. They see just an x squared or just a y squared. Remember, all that means is that the center, so the x coordinate of the center would be 0 because there's nothing there. The y coordinate of the center would be 0. And then the radius, if this is a 16, 4 squared would give us 16. So this is a pretty straightforward one. It is centered at the origin, so just put a little mark right there. And then our radius is 4, so we are going to go 4 units up, down, 4 units to the left, and to the right. So our 4 points right there, we just connect the dots and make that into a circle. All right, so let's look on the next page for some more of these that are not in standard form. We're going to do number 5 as well. So this one, a couple things. First of all, they're not quite in the right order. We're used to seeing the x stuff and the y stuff on the left, and then the plain old constant on the right. So let's keep this one right here. We're going to move the 8 over to the right, and then we're going to move this whole quantity over to the left. So since it's negative, we just add it, and it's a positive when we move it over to the left. Equals, and then this 8 will add over to the right. So that's the first step. Second step, just like number 3, we're not supposed to have these coefficients here, so we divide everything by 2. So these twos cancel. We have x, sorry, that should be a minus, x minus 1 squared plus y plus 6 squared equals 4. So that is our standard form now. We can write down the center and the radius. So our center, x minus 1, means this is a 1. Y plus 6 means this is a negative 6. And our radius, if this is the radius squared, then the radius would be 2. So we go to our center, 1 unit to the right and 6 units down. Just mark a little point there. And then for our actual circle, we go 2 units in each direction. So 2 units up, 2 units down, and back to the center, 2 units left, and 2 units right. And then just take those 4 points and connect the dots. Usually the smaller they are, the easier it is to make them look circular. All right, our last little section here are equations where we have to complete the square. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of these. So number 6, completing the square will be a little flashback to previous units. What we're trying to do is turn these into our standard form. Okay, so just a little reminder here of what our standard form is going to look like. It's supposed to look like this. So the way that I want you guys to do these, I want you to gather up all the stuff that has x's, put them here, plus all the stuff that has y's, put them here, equals, and then plain old constant would be over on the right. So you can see here there is a plain old constant on the right. We're going to regroup so that the x stuff goes together. So we have x squared plus 6x, kind of keep that as one group. That's the x stuff. Plus y squared, which is all we have for the y stuff, equals negative 5. All right, so now looking at our form. Y squared is like good to go. Y squared is kind of like the previous one where we looked at number 3 and it was just a y squared. So this one's totally fine. This piece right here, we have to complete the square in order to be able to write it in this form. So I will remind you guys of what completing the square looks like. Remember, we take this middle term, that's 6. Take the middle term, cut it in half. Half of 6 gives us 3. And then we take that 3 and we square it. So that gives us 9. So this 9 is what's missing to turn this into a trinomial that factors perfectly into the form that we need. So now that, in my next step, is going to be the perfect factored version of the way that my circle equations are supposed to look. Then plus y squared equals negative 5, and then one extra little change you need to make. This plus 9 wasn't here before, so essentially what we just did was we added 9 to the left. So in order to keep ourselves balanced, we also have to add 9 to the right. So let's simplify everything down. This part that I underlined right here, we can factor that down. Just kind of ignore everything else while you are factoring this. So this, we start with x times x, multiplying to 9 and adding to 6. So when we factor it, it factors to y plus 3, y plus 3. Since they are perfect repeats, we factor it down like that. So there's a reason that we added this 9. That's the form that we need to be in standard form for a circle. So completing the square helps us to get there. And then plus y squared is equal to 4. So that is standard form. Little bit of work that we need to do in order to get it into standard form, but then once it's there, we can graph it pretty easily. Center, x plus 3 means x is a negative 3. Just a y squared means the y coordinate is 0. 4 is the radius squared, which means the radius is 2. So let's go ahead and plot. Negative 3, 0, just make a little mark there on the x-axis, and then we are going 2 units in both directions, or all 4 directions. 2 units up and down, then back to the center, 2 units left and right. 4 points, we just connect the dots. Okay, one final problem we will do is number 8. So we're going to complete the square here, group together all the x stuff, group together all the y stuff. So I have x squared plus 14x. So there's my little grouping of x stuff. Plus y squared, this 2y that's currently on the right, I'm going to subtract it from both sides. And that will be a grouping of y stuff. Equals, and then the negative 41 just stays here on the right-hand side. So now let's go through, follow that same process that I did up here with number 6, but with some new numbers down here. So this one, the 14, if I cut 14 in half, I get 7. When I square that 7, I get 49. So I add 49 to both sides of my equation. First add it to the x stuff right here. And then I also have to add it to the right-hand side. So I'm going to add 49 to the right-hand side. Now back here, y squared. I take half of this number right here, half of negative 2 is negative 1. Then I take that negative 1 and square it, and that gives me 1. So now I add 1 to both sides to make this one a perfect trinomial. So add 1 to this piece right here, and then I am also going to add 1 to the right-hand side of my equation. Sorry, kind of running out of space here. So this is going to factor. It's going to factor perfectly, just like example 6 did. So half of 14 is 7. 7 squared gives us 49. So 7 times 7 multiplies to 49. 7 plus 7 adds to 14. So this would be an x plus 7 times x plus 7. So I write it squared. Plus, in this one, y times y gives me y squared. Negative 1 squared gives me 1. And then when I add it together, I get a negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. Negative 1 plus negative 1 is negative 2. So it factors to y minus 1, y minus 1. And I write it like this. Equals, and then we add all these things together, we end up getting 9. So this right here is our standard form for the circle. Let's finish this last problem with the center and the radius, and then our graph. X plus 7 means my x coordinate is a negative 7. Y minus 1 means my y coordinate is a 1. And then the radius, this is the radius squared, so 3 squared would give us that 9. So one final graph, negative 7, 1 is our center, so just a little mark there. And then our radius is 3. So from the center, we go up 3 units and down 3 units. And from the center again, we go left 3 units and right 3 units. So perfectly centered around that little mark that we put right here. And that would be our circle for number 8.